afternoon. Thanks for joining us here at NASA's Johnson Space Center. Today is March 9th, International Space Station. Currently aboard is Expedition 59. 3 crew members just arrived less than a week ago, and we'll have 4 spacewalkers over these next 3 weeks. Here's a photo of them from left to right. We have NASA's Anne McClain, NASA's Nick Hague, NASA's Christina Cook, and Devise St. Jacques of the Canadian Space Agency. The first 2 will be conducted by Nick Hague, the first will be conducted by Nick Hague and Anne McClain. Anne McClain will do her second EVA with Christina Cook for the March 29th spacewalk. Again, we're talking about the 2 spacewalks coming up in the next 2 weeks, March 22nd and 29th, to upgrade batteries on the outside of the International Space Station. We'll come back and talk about that 3rd one in a few weeks. With me, of course, is a panel of experts who's going to go into all the details of these upcoming spacewalks. To my right, we have Penny Todd, Operations Integration Manager for the International Space Station. Next, we have Mary Lawrence, the Flight Director for these next 2 spacewalks. And then lastly, we have Jackie Cade, Spacewalk Officer for Spacewalks 52 and 53 to upgrade the batteries on the outside of the International Space Station. So first, we'll start, as always, with a few opening comments from our panel of experts. We'll go down the line and get a comment from each of them, and then we'll open it up for questions. Of course, we have here in the room. We'll have some phone calls, and we'll be taking questions using the hashtag NASA on social media. Again, for those of you on the phone, please remember to press *1 to notify that you want to ask a question.
We'll talk about the first couple EVAs here. These 2 EVAs are part of a triple that we're going to do right here at the front end of the increment. We'll be back to talk about the 3rd EVA in another week or so. But anyway, once we get through this triple, we're back to the visiting vehicle carousel that we sometimes get into. The month of April is going to be very busy relative to visiting vehicle traffic. Our Russian friends are going to launch and dock another Progress vehicle. They will again use a 2-orbit rendezvous technique, which will be their 2nd flight that they're doing that on. So anyway, they had good success with it back in July, and so we're certainly eager to see how things go again with 72P. And then about a week and a half or so later, on the 17th of April, Northrop Grumman will launch their 11th commercial cargo resupply flight, their Cygnus module. And so we'll welcome that Cygnus aboard around the 19th of April. And then about 10 days later, we'll be back in what we call dual berth visiting vehicle mode, where we'll have the SpaceX 17 Dragon on board, and with it, as usual, several thousand pounds of cargo and science. And so we really look forward, especially with this particular crew, who are just arriving to station, really getting up and running and getting some new science on board for them for the next few months. So we're pretty excited about that. The Cygnus will be on for about 3 months or so. It'll take us into July. But between now and then, like I said, we've got these EVAs to get done. We've got a lot of science to do. This particular increment will wrap up around the end of June timeframe when we bring Anne and David home. And so, as well as Oleg. So we'll look forward to an action-packed next 3 months or so. But first and foremost, again, these 2 EVAs, we've been working to try to get them on the schedule for quite a while, and to finally have this opportunity early in the increment. I know Christina and Nick and David and Ann are really excited and have been studying hard. So we'll look forward to getting those executed over the next week or 2 here. And so with that, I'll let Mary tell you about what we're going to do.
Okay. So I think Jackie's going to detail the EVA plans kind of in detail here. She even has a nifty little video to go with it. But what I think I'll talk about is just the preparation operations that we've been doing. Preparing for a spacewalk is a very busy time, as you know, on orbit and also here on the ground. What's unique about these operations is we're not just doing 2 EVAs, we're also doing about 12 days of highly choreographed dynamic operations in order to set up the EVA so that the crew members are able to go outside and complete the operations for us so we can reactivate some power channels. So we're replacing some batteries, nickel hydrogen batteries, 12 of them out on the P4 truss. We're going to be working on 2 of the 8 power channels here on ISS. and we're replacing them with 6 new lithium-ion batteries. Most of this work, we prefer to do as much of it robotically as possible. And that's both to reduce the risk of sending crew members outside for multiple EVAs, and it also is a really good exercise in use of our robotic arm and the capabilities we have associated with that. So on Saturday, we kicked off the battery operations for the 4A power channel, and we started discharging and draining the batteries in order to make them safe for removal. And then later, actually yesterday afternoon, we terminated the drain on the batteries and got started on the robotic operation. So up to this point, we've already removed 2 of the old nickel hydrogen batteries from the 4A channel, and we've replaced one of them with a lithium-ion battery. We're going to continue to do these robotics for about 48 hours, and then we'll be complete with that. We'll stand down for a short period of time while we prepare the crew to go outside to do the spacewalk, and they'll complete the operation for us, essentially hooking up an adapter plate and some cabling, enabling us to complete the circuit where we can reactivate the batteries and the associated power channel. We've talked to the crew a couple times and in some conferences that we have in preparation for the EVAs. They're very excited and very well prepared. So some of the preparations that they're doing leading into the EVA include procedure reviews. So some of these conferences, we answer questions and we kind of quiz them on procedures. They can't really take a book of procedures out there with them, so they have to really know them quite well. And so they've been working through studying those procedures. And also preparing the suits. So when they launch on board, we know pretty well what suit size they are, but of course your body changes slightly in space due to fluid shifts or spine elongation. So we do refit suits to the crew members and make sure that they have the optimal fit to ensure efficiency when we're going outside for a spacewalk. Also, we review and check all of the tools that we're going to take out. We do a lot of preparation to verify that we're going to take out the right tools that we might need for the nominal operations and also in a contingency case. So we think through that, we pack those bags, and we do a lot of inspections of tethers and the tools that we're going to take outside. We also charge batteries, install cameras on their suits, and prepare those types of things. So the crew's very busy and very well prepared so far leading into the EVA for Friday. With that, I think we have an animation that shows an example of some of the robotics ops that we'll do it. So here you see the robotic arm. It's holding what we call the SPDM. The SPDM is, you can think of it as kind of the hand to the robotic arm. The SPDM itself has 2 arms on it and some additional platforms that can hold ORUs that we're removing, such as the batteries, as you can see in this. Those arms have special tools that can drive bolts so that they can remove the batteries. This here is an example of what it would look like when an old battery currently on the P4 truss is being removed. It will be temporarily either stored on the SPDM or moved over to the exposed platform, which was delivered on HTV-7, housing the new lithium-ion batteries. There's 9 slots on the external pallet that will hold the old batteries for eventual disposal. And then the new lithium-ion batteries will be picked up also by the SPDM and transitioned over to the truss for installation. There are only 9 slots on the exposed pallet, so we can only dispose of 9 of the nickel hydrogen batteries that currently exist. 3 of them will need to be permanently housed on the IEA, which is the integrated electronics assembly where we're installing the new batteries. And when Jackie talks through the EVA, she'll show you kind of the choreography of how the crew will complete the installation and kind of leapfrog over some of those batteries for permanent storage on ISS.
Okay, thank you, Mary. With that, we'll go to some of the procedures. Jackie.
Okay, thank you very much, Carrie. Basically, my team, as Kenny has said, has been working on this EVA for quite a while now. I have my task lead, Greer Will, and her OJT, Emma, and my EMU is Reagan Cheney, and airlock is Dave Simon. We've been preparing these procedures and getting them ready to do starting last September, but due to scheduling issues, we have not done these EVAs yet. One of the first things, as Mary said, the robotics sets us up to go out the door with 3 lithium-ion batteries installed on the truss, and then we remove the adapter plate from the exposed pallet and take it over to the truss. Once we mate the adapter plate, we connect an umbilical, and that will mate the battery pair so that the battery channel can reactivate once we get the 3 battery pairs mated. I think with that, we'll step into the EVA video that we've prepared to show you the choreography of the EVAs themselves. Basically, we go out the door, we take 2 adapter plates, we move them to the truss, hook them up, and then we'll go back, get the 3rd adapter plate, and take it to the truss. So with that, let's roll the video.
At the beginning of the first battery EVA, the crew will egress the airlock, bringing out their tool bags and a V-guide bag. They will then translate with the bags to the back of S0 to stow it for a future contingency EVA. This is just moving hardware to the outside of the station in order to make more room inside. Next, EV1 and McLean with the red stripes on her suit will head out to the worksite on P4. She will stop at the CETA cart to retrieve a foot restraint that she will use during the EVA. From there, McLean will continue to the P4 truss segment, where she will set up all the tools needed for the P4 worksite. While that's happening, EV2, Nick Haig, will translate to the CETA cart. He will move the CETA cart outboard in order to create a bridge between the P4 truss and the exposed pallet for the crew. After the bridge is created, Haig will translate to the EP, where he will be in charge of setting up the worksite. He will start by releasing high launch torques on all the bolts needed for this EVA. McLean will join Haig at the exposed pallet. They will each retrieve an adapter plate to place on their BRT. The crew will release the last bolt on the adapter plates and place an adapter plate on each BRT to translate down to the P4 worksite. Once the crew gets to the P4 worksite, EV1 will ingress the APFR. They will work together to install an adapter plate that EV2 is carrying into the empty slot. The spacewalkers will connect cable to complete the mating of this battery pair. Next, McLean and Haig will relocate an old battery from the worksite to the slot where they just placed the adapter plate. This will allow them to open up a new slot to install a new adapter plate. crew installs the new adapter plate into the empty slot and connect cable to complete the circuit for the second battery pair. After relocating a foot restraint in order to reach the final slot, the crew will remove the last battery and install it onto the adapter plate they just installed. This opens up the third and final slot for this EVA. Once that slot is open, the astronauts will translate together to the exposed pallet to retrieve the third adapter plate and clean up the EP worksite. They will head back to the P4 worksite. McLean will ingress a foot restraint, and the crew will work together to do the final adapter plate install. Once bolted down, the crew will connect cable mating the third battery pair. At that time, they will then give the ground a go to regain the power channel. The crew will clean up the P4 worksite, head to the airlock, and ingress, completing the EVA.
So as you can see from the video that the batteries that we're talking about for a space station are very large. The new lithium-ion batteries are about 300 pounds each above it. And you can see here we have, this is our new lithium-ion battery. These are NBL mock-ups that we use in the neutral buoyancy laboratory to plan the EVA and to train the crew members on how to handle the batteries and the APs themselves. And here is our adapter plate. This is the main focus of the EVAs. The crew will be taking the adapter plate off of the EP, putting it on their BRT using the handrail there on the side, moving it over to the IEA, and then mating it by driving the bolts here in the stanchions. There's a bolt in each stanchion. One's a jacking bolt, one's a structural bolt, and the crew will drive both. After that, they will take the connector, unroute it from the adapter plate, and move it over and connect it to the lithium-ion battery connector. That would complete the battery pair. The crew has practiced this, all four of them have practiced this in the NBL before they left the ground. And it is similar to what we did on orbit for EVAs 38 and 39, which upgraded the S4 truss. That said, we have Thomas Pesquet as our ground IV walking the crew members through this EVA. He was EV2 on EVA 39, so we brought some experience back to help our team walk through this EVA and help these crew members as they go through the day. With that, we can go into the next video. It is a layout of EVA 2. It is very similar to EVA 1. We do a slightly different task at the beginning. Both beginning tasks bring large hardware out of the airlock onto the space station, and then we get into the battery tasks. EVA 2 is slightly shorter for battery tasks because the robotics was able to remove an extra old battery from the IEA for us. So we have identified some tasks that get us ahead for the next battery upgrade out on P6. And that battery upgrade will be after HTV 8, and so we're going to go and try to prep the worksite for them a little bit. If we can roll the EVA 2 video.
The crew begins the EVA by egressing the airlock and handing out the tool bags. They then hand out the new adjustable grapple bar, or AGB. They then will translate the AGB onto the external storage platform 2, where they will install it on the FHRC. The new grapple bar will serve as a spare and as an upgrade for future use. Next, EV1, Anne McLean with the red stripes on her suit, will head out to the worksite on P4. She will stop to retrieve an APFR, or foot restraint, that she will use during the EVA. EP2, Christina Cook, will proceed to the SETA cart and deploy a bridge between the P4 truss and the exposed pallet for the crew. She will translate to the EP and set up the worksite. Cook will start by releasing the high launch torques on all the adapter plate bolts. At this time, McLean will join her at the exposed pallet. The spacewalkers will each retrieve an adapter plate to place on their BRT, then translate to the P4 worksite. Once at the worksite, EV1 will ingress the APFR. The crew will work together to install an adapter plate into the empty slot. Once the adapter plate is bolted into place, the astronauts will connect cable to complete the battery pair circuit in the first slot. The crew will then get into position to install the adapter plate that EV1 has into the second empty slot. They will connect cable to mate the second battery pair for this EVA. After adjusting the foot restraint, the crew will proceed to remove and relocate an old battery. The crew will install that old battery on an adapter plate, freeing up the third empty slot on this EVA. McLean and Cook will translate together to the exposed pallet to retrieve the third and final adapter plate. They will clean up the EP worksite and translate back to the P4 worksite. McLean will once again ingress the APFR, and then both astronauts will then work to install the final adapter plate. After connecting the cable, the crew will give the ground a go to regain the power channel. The crew will start to wrap up work on the EVA by cleaning up the P4 worksite, the CETA cart, and the APFR bridge. This will return the outside of the space station to a nominal configuration. At this point, we should have a little under an hour of spare time left on this EVA. We will use this time to prep P6, which will be the next truss to get upgraded batteries during HTV 8. The P6 spacewalkers will not have the benefit of robotics due to arm reach, so more EVAs will be required. For the remainder of this EVA, we will deploy fabric handrail straps, or gap spanners, and release some of the bolts to help reduce future work. Anne and Christina will return to the airlock and ingress, completing the EVA.
So that concludes our EVA number 2. For both EVAs, we do expect to go the full 630. We have prepared some get-ahead tasks in case the EVA, the tasks that we are planning go a little shorter than normal. One of these get-ahead tasks is to remove some debris off of the Node 1 Nadir CBM. It was in video, we have seen a piece of FOD on the CBM. So we have a tool here that we have tape on. We would use the tape to dab the debris off, and if that doesn't work, we then have a scraper with a Teflon end that's safe to use on the CBM to scrape it off. That is just one of the get-ahead tasks that we have ready to go in case we have extra time on either EVA.
Thank you, Jackie. Yeah, there's a lot of work, you know, of course, for doing the battery swaps. That's the main purpose of the task, including on the last animation, we saw some of the work kind of getting ready the next task, which is the P6 truss. Now, Kenny, this is part of a larger story, right? This kind of started last year with some of this battery replacement, and it's part of a series. What's the whole story here? Yeah, it's an ongoing maintenance operation. It's one that we put in place several years ago with the purchase of the lithium-ion battery, stepping up the technology, new equipment. But just like your rechargeable batteries at home, eventually over time, you know, they're not going to recharge as well. They're not going to hold as much, you know, charge when it comes to putting loads on them. And over the life of station, we knew this was going to happen. We knew the batteries were going to have to be replaced, and so we started last year on the starboard side, on the inboard side. We replaced batteries there. This year, we're going to replace the port side on the inboard side, and then and as you saw in the video. When HTV8 comes up, it's going to bring yet another set of lithium-ion batteries. When we're going to do those EVAs, I think is still TBD. We're trying to lay out the plan at the end of the year and the first of next year, and so they'll arrive on HTV8, but we're still going through the decision process on whether we'll try to do something in the near term while HTV8's on, or our most likely option is to do just exactly what we've done here, which is put the EP on the POA, hang on to it for a while, look for a convenient place to do it. The batteries themselves that are currently installed on P6 are not a threat to us from the standpoint of performance at this time. And so we got a little time to talk about it and think about it, and we'll find the right place to put that set of EVAs based on all the other things that we have coming down, you know, down the pipe right now. Great, and we can even look forward to some prep work on these upcoming EVAs to get ready for those. Now, Mary, why are we doing this? You know, why don't we just take the same batteries and just swap them out? Why are we upgrading to lithium-ion?
Well, Gary, as Kenny kind of alluded to, lithium-ion batteries are kind of a new technology, so they're an upgrade from a performance perspective. They have a higher energy density, so of course you'll see we can have one lithium-ion battery to two of the previous older batteries. So there is some advantages from an energy density perspective. Newer technologies and just advances in the science is really what made us switch over to the lithium-ion.
Wonderful. And I think that's a nice way to round out the story. Of course, these two EVAs focused on swapping out these batteries. So now's a good time. We'll open it up for questions. I guess, again, if you're on the phone, please press *1 to make sure your question is submitted. We'll be sure to note you here. I have a little iPad where we can call your name. And we'll be fielding hashtag Ask NASA questions. But we'll start here in the room if we have any questions. Mr. Berger.
Hi, Eric Berger with Ars Technica. I've got a couple of probably dumb questions, but I want to make sure I have it right. These batteries store up energy from the solar panels when the station is in sunlight, and then when it goes behind the Earth, they power the station. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. And you said this affects 2 of 8 power channels, the batteries that you're working on. So I'm probably mangling this, but does that mean that 25% of the station's power will be offline, and will that affect operations at all?
Either way?
Yeah, go for it.
I can take it. So we'll only take down one power channel at a time. So we have a lot of redundancy in our power kind of across ISS, so we can afford to kind of take one channel down, and what we do is what we put in place is called a seamless power channel handover, where we transition the loads that are currently on one power channel over to a sister power channel that will support the loads temporarily. We do lose a little bit of redundancy in that regard, but there's very little impact to the overall power loading across the station in that configuration.
And then finally, if you had a larger vehicle like the Space Shuttle available, could you have brought up like a pallet of 6 of those at once and just kind of like taken out the old ones and put in a new pallet of 6 batteries, or would they have to be modular like this no matter what sort of volume limitations you had on up to station?
Yeah, I think if you look at the way the station is constructed, particularly in the area of the integrated electronics assembly, it's not a remove and replace at the big level with all the individual batteries in it. It's not that type of plug and play. It was never designed, and station wasn't built that way. So having a shuttle available to us wouldn't have really provided us an opportunity to do it any different in terms of the actual, robotics and EVA operation.
Mr. Perlman.
Hi, Robert Perlman with CollectSpace.com. There's been some promotion before this about the fact that the second of these EVAs will be the first spacewalk to be conducted by all women. But it was mentioned that the planning for these EVAs dates back to last fall. Can you just set the stage a little bit? How many other crew members have been assigned or temporarily penciled in to do these EVAs, and just the planning purposes that has now resulted in this lineup?
Okay. I've kind of lost track at this point, I think, with the number of crew members, and exactly, Jackie might have kept track of that a little bit better than me. But how we handle that, it's actually pretty common. We plan EVAs to fall in a particular time frame, and as you guys are aware, things change all the time. So depending on when the operations, we have an opportunity to kind of fit in a spacewalk. What we do is try to guess essentially when approximately that's going to happen and what crew members will be on orbit at that time. And then we train crew members on increments kind of on the front side and the back side of those operations, just to cover our bases. In the event that the operations should slip to a new crew member, we just want to make sure that everyone is kind of well trained generically in these operations. We also kind of generically train EVA skills so that things like bolt operations could be achieved by any kind of generically trained EVA crew member if they didn't have the benefit of training the choreography specific to these operations.
And just a general question about the spacesuits being used. These are the same EMUs, or at least parts of them are the same EMUs that have dated back through the shuttle program. Do you have some sense of the specific histories of the spacesuits that are on station now, and how far back their history goes?
That's a great question. I'll have to look at the ones specific for this EVA. But in the last couple of years, we were using a suit that dated back 30 years from its first use. So these have been over a long span, but they have been upgraded on the ground between the end of shuttle and before we left them on board for station for long-term use. Each suit gets checked out before we go out the door so we can confirm that everything's in working order before we ever take it outside. But I'd have to get back to you on these particular suits when they were first launched.
But we do, through our commercial cargo services, we rotate suits up and down there as well. And in fact, I think these couple of suits here fit in that ballpark that not having been on station that long since they've been refurbished here on the ground. So it's a ongoing, up and down sort of approach. They're certified for a certain number of EVAs, certain number of years on station, and then we'll bring them home, refurb them. We have that capability to do that, and so we're continuing to do those type of refurbishment operations.
Okay, thank you. I think we have another one in the room.
Thank you so much for your time. Roseanne Aragon with KPRC. Just wanted to direct this question really to anybody, but maybe specifically Mary or Jackie, about this moment where EVA-2 will have 2 women. Can you just talk to me about what this moment is like for you as women in STEM, and specifically women who's leading this space mission?
Sure, I'll kick that off. If the EVA assignments work out as we planned, like you said, Anne and Christina will have an opportunity to be the first all-female EVA, which I think will be a proud moment for NASA if the assignments stay as we plan. I was assigned to the team about a year ago, and really the first thing that struck me about the team is the high caliber of individuals kind of across the board. So I'm very proud of this team in general. I'm also excited for all 4 of the USOS crew members on orbit that will get an opportunity to do EVAs, hopefully, over the next month. So I'm excited to see that and to be part of the first, all-female EVA. I think certainly if they can inspire kind of that next generation of space explorers, they're certainly worthy of that inspiration, and I'm just really proud to be part of it.
And my other question is about the batteries. And when you replace it, what is the significance of what it does for science on the International Space Station? Again, all of our viewers are not all space, experts, I would say. So what is the significance of replacing all of these batteries?
Sure. Well, like we've talked about, of course, the power is provided to all of the space station, both the systems that control the space station, also all of the science experiments through solar array and solar power. We go through a sunrise, sunset about every 90 minutes on station, so we don't have the benefit of having sun all of the time. So we need a place to kind of store energy and seamlessly source power to all of the systems and science experiments on the International Space Station. So as we transition from sunlight into darkness, the power kind of seamlessly switches between solar array power and battery power. And so these batteries are critical systems to help control the power on the space station.
Thank you very much. Okay, we have some callers on the phone. Before we do, I do want to get to one hashtag Ask NASA question. Leah.
We have a question from Joshua, who wants to know, once the pallet is full of the old batteries, how will it be discarded? Is it jettisoned from the station, or is it attached to a visiting vehicle?
That's a great question. Our intention at this point is to dispose of it, hopefully in an HTV vehicle. The vehicle that brought these batteries up is no longer on space station. So at this point, our goal is to try to reinstall this pallet full of batteries in a future HTV and have them disposed of whenever that HTV re-enters the atmosphere, and then all components will burn up at that point. So that's our plan as it stands right now, and we're just trying to identify exactly which HTV it is, possibly HTV-8. We're still working through that with our Japanese colleagues to see if there's any issues or complications with doing that, but that's what we'd like to do.
Thank you. Okay, as I mentioned, we have a few callers. Again, if you're calling in, make sure to press *1 so we note that we come to you for a question. Let's start off with Caroline from InStyle. Okay. Okay. Again, make sure to press *1 if you want to ask a question. Do we have any more questions in the room? Of course.
Just to follow up on the spacesuit question, can you say how many active spacesuits you have for the International Space Station, and if that number's changed over the last 5 years, and if the current stock you have is going to be enough to get you, say, through the next decade of operations? Or I know there's been some contracts pulled back, so maybe you could just kind of give me a big picture view of spacesuit operation.
You guys have the number on board right now?
There are 4 spacesuits on board right now. There's I'd have to double check, but at least another 2 on the ground that's under maintenance before their next launch during their refurbishment. I don't know beyond that about the contracts.
In terms of our long-term plan, we have a sustaining plan that gets us out through the remainder of the program with these particular suits. Yeah, absolutely. We're continuing to look at new technologies and trying to figure out how we can use the ISS continue to use it as a test bed for any future developments, especially in the spacesuit area. If we're going to go to the moon and Mars, this is not the suit we want to go with, and so absolutely we're continuing to look at options and evaluate new technologies that are brought to us for consideration. But in terms of the standard maintenance operation or supporting contingency EVAs and all of that, we have suits we need on orbit, and we have rotation plans to allow us to be able to bring those suits home and get them refurbed.
And just to be clear on the fact that Christine and Ann are going to be doing this EVA, this is not something that NASA set up specially so that they would have 2 women doing an EVA at the same time. This is just a matter of rotations and the fact that there are more female astronauts, more female flight controllers and people here at NASA. Is that right?
Well, I can certainly take cut at it, and I mean, as Mary said, there was a lot of circumstances that got us here, but in terms of these 2 females going outside, it all starts with competence and capability, and they just happen to have it just like every other astronaut has it. So I had a conversation with the head of the EVA branch within the crew office back in December, and we were talking about what the potential was for doing the EVAs early in the year, we're doing them in the springtime, and we were looking at all the possibilities, and it was this idea of, hey, here's the folks that we're thinking about sending out, and part of the deal was take an opportunity where we can to grow the experience base within the crew office. We got a lot of young crew members here. Chances are they're going to see space again at some point, and as much as we can, we'd like to make them veteran spacewalkers so that the next time around when they go up with somebody that's never flown before, they'll have a veteran there that they can help bridge the experience gap. And so when we were having this conversation, probably 10 minutes into it, when we talked to Ann and Christina and so forth, I don't know if it was Kate or I that kind of said, have we ever sent 2 women out before? It just wasn't something that jumped out at us because, again, it all starts here with competence and abilities, and regardless male or female, that's got to be the core of how we start a conversation like this, and that's true of the folks sitting to my right as well. There's nothing about this that's somehow or another put together to make it look like a certain thing. It's fantastic it turned out that way, but it starts with just basic competence and abilities, and we're very blessed right now in that. So it's a great opportunity. It's a great way to highlight some of the things that are going on here. But these 2 spacewalkers are just solid astronauts.
Thank you. Let's hop over to the phone bridge real quick. We have Dave Mosier from Business Insider. Dave.
Hey, thank you for doing this briefing. I really appreciate it. And I suppose this question is for anyone who's best to answer it. But during these briefings, there's often talk about, how you like to avoid having astronauts do these spacewalks because there is a risk to doing that. You like to do as much robotic work as possible. And in this case, you mentioned the batteries, I think, are 300 pounds each. That's quite heavy. I'm not sure that's as heavy as the ammonia tank that somebody chucked a few years ago. But can you talk to the risks of these particular spacewalks? What are your kind of biggest moments you're going to be looking for, and you're going to try to have the astronauts be the most careful? Thank you.
Sure, I can take that question. So one of the things we worry about is just keeping the crew members safe. When they go out the door, they're essentially in their own mini spacecraft, so to speak, with their suits. So anytime that they're holding anything that's really big or bulky that is strapped to them, like these adapter plates will be, those are the times where we'd be worried that you could run into a suit issue and have to, translate inside quickly or respond quickly, and it would be challenging with an adapter plate attached essentially to your belt. So we kind of talk through scenarios associated with that when we do a lot of the planning, when we talk through contingency scenarios of what if this were to happen while the crew member had an adapter plate, for example, strapped to them. We have temporary tie-down plans, and we practice this in simulation so that we're prepared to kind of handle those times. So certainly when the adapter plates are on the crew member is a time that we would be a little bit worried about what to do with that in the event of a contingency. And also they'll be maneuvering some of the old lithium hydrogen batteries from one location to another slot location, which is another time where we'll need to be very careful to make sure that there is no contact with the other crew member, for example, with that battery. And again, they're holding a big bulky thing, so a contingency response that we would need to quickly respond to would be something that we're kind of carefully thinking about and planning for.
Okay, thank you from Dave. Again, if you're on the phone bridge, please press *1 to make sure that we have prompted you to ask a question. We'll take a hashtag Ask NASA question. Again, keep sending those on social media. Leah, hashtag Ask NASA.
Bob's question is, did the old batteries die, or is this more of a precautionary change?
Definitely precautionary, and again, pre-planned. We knew to get station out to its planned lifetime, we were going to end up having to change out these batteries. We knew we were on this path and have been planning it for a number of years.
Okay, we also have a question from Mr. Hancock's class about spacewalks in general. So how long does it take to get suited up for a spacewalk?
That's a great question. The day is a very long day for the crew members. They wake up first thing in the morning, and they get to get themselves ready in the morning just like any other day. But fairly soon after that, they get on oxygen masks to start pre-breathe, and we step into a series of procedures that will get them suited up and purge the nitrogens from their system to last so that we lower the risk of any DCS risk for the day. It takes about 4 to 5 hours on the morning of the EVA before we go out the door for the spacewalk.
Another question about the spacesuits. Is oxygen only used in the spacesuits, or is nitrogen used as well?
It is a pure oxygen environment in the spacesuit. There is no nitrogen in the spacesuit.
Great questions. We're going back to the phone bridge. We have Hanneke waiting from space.com.
Hi, thanks for taking my question. So I'm wondering, we've been having this ongoing power upgrades at the space station with all these different spacewalks for several years. Where do these next two spacewalks put us in terms of the progress? Or do we have like an end goal here, or is this just kind of ongoing perpetually?
If you look at the expected life of station, our plan is not to do another another set of battery swaps. From an ongoing maintenance standpoint, we still have to do the outboards, so that'll take a series of operations and EVAs for batteries that are going to come up later this year, and that'll get the port side outboard, and then we have to go do the starboard side outboard. So once we get done with this set of batteries here, we have two more sets of EVAs, if you will, to round out the full set of battery replacements, and that should get us out through the end of the program.
Excellent. Okay, we'll do one last sweep here in the room. Any last final questions before we break? Okay.
How long will these lithium batteries last? How often would you have to replace them theoretically if you use them to the end of its life?
That is a very good question. I just know it's a very long time. I would have to look at it. I mean, it becomes a performance issue at some point. When do they start to degrade? When do they become degraded so much that we couldn't use them? But they're years and years and years. But that's a good question. I can get the answer for you. That's a good question.
The current batteries, of course, have been on orbit for more than 10 years, so we would expect these to last similar length of time. Plus, they're a newer technology, and they can go through several discharge cycles that, like Kenny said, I think probably take us out towards the end of the ISS program.
Okay. Very good questions all around. Thank you for joining us here today to brief these upcoming spacewalks. Again, Nick Hague and Ann McLean will head out on Friday, March 22nd. We're set to begin our coverage at 5:30 a.m. Central Time, 6:30 a.m. Eastern for both spacewalks, both the one Friday, March 22nd and Friday, March 29th. They're set to go out the door, I believe the first one at 7:10 a.m. Central, 7:20 for the second one, just for TDRS satellite coverage to make sure we have good video and audio coming from the International Space Station. So again, thank you for tuning in to our preview briefing to see what's coming up over these next few weeks, replacing the batteries, a larger set of spacewalks to do the entire truss segment of the International Space Station, upgrading from nickel hydrogen to lithium ion. Stay tuned for our coverage coming up next Friday and the Friday after, March 22nd and March 29th. And finally, thanks to our great briefers who were able to field our questions today. Thanks. We'll see you next time.